What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to a brand new video discussion. And this time we're going to go on ahead and essentially discuss the top 5 things that I would love to see adapted from Marvel's Spider-Man into the Avengers video game. So of course, if you don't know, Marvel Spider-Man is an absolutely amazing game. And it is truly at this point up there with the Batman Arkham games as kind of the bar that you want to try to surpass if you're making a superhero video game. If you can get even close to the bar that Spider-Man and Batman Arkham City and Arkham Asylum and Arkham Knight have set, then you know that you've knocked it out of the park. Well, what are the things that seem to be really cool elements from Spider-Man that I think should be applied and hopefully will be interpreted in the Avengers video game? We're going to run through those here today. I want to hear your thoughts as well in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think. Do you agree with some of the selections? Do you disagree? And then in addition to that, let me know maybe something that I personally missed, or more importantly, I think it'd be interesting if some people pointed out some things that they absolutely despise or dislike in the Spider-Man video game that they hope they don't see in Marvel's Avengers. So with that all in mind, ladies and gentlemen, before we get rocking and rolling, I do want to go on ahead and ask you guys for a quick like. So thank you guys so very much for the support. If you can, hit that like button. Even if you don't like the video right now, stick around till the end. Maybe it changes your mind, and then it would be highly appreciated if you dropped a rating down below. So with that in mind, let's get rocking and let's get it rolling. So the first thing we're going to kick things off on is kind of something that has been addressed a little bit already by the Avengers game, because obviously we're going into the Avengers game with some knowledge. We're seemingly getting more and more information, like for example the fact that Ms. Marvel is going to be the actual protagonist of the game that will kind of unite the rest of the Avengers and bring them back together after A-Day takes place in the Avengers universe or game universe. So I think that that's obviously very cool that we're getting a little bit of narrative information, but we've also gotten some details like the first point that I want to raise, and that is the suits / powers for those suits in Spider-Man. So one of my favorite things in the game, in the Marvel Spider-Man video game, is the fact that not only do we get suits that are very cool, because obviously it's always cool to see superheroes with different costumes and different designs and such. It's very awesome. But I think one of the coolest aspects of Spider-Man is the fact that they gave those suits unique abilities. Like if we look in the Batman side of things, we do have lots of different suits as well, but unfortunately they never did anything unique with them. Like it's not like when I picked the Batman Beyond costume in Arkham City, I suddenly gained the ability to fly around just like Terry does in the actual Batman Beyond comics and TV show. Or if I select Sinestro Corps Batman, I suddenly have some sort of an ability to like create a construct that can then go on ahead and destroy enemies with like this brand new lantern ability. It just seems like it would be really cool if they went ahead and included those types of elements in Avengers as well. We know that suits are coming. We know that we've seen, for example, the Professor Hulk costume. We've seen several different variations of outfits for some of the announced heroes like Thor and Iron Man and things like that. But we haven't got confirmation that the suits will vary outside of aesthetics. They have addressed a loot system, which we will discuss in just a moment, because that is one of my points as well. But I think it'd be really awesome if, for example, you could do silly stuff like when you select Professor Hulk, maybe when you have that costume on, the lines that the character delivers, I don't know, you give him like some sort of different lines that he talks about more about like science and things like that. Or he could even just create some sort of a moment where he's like, I don't want to fight anymore. Just some little things that differentiate the costumes outside of just, oh, it's a different skin on top of the exact same skeleton and the same gameplay. I think that would be a cool implementation, and I hope that they borrow that idea, quote unquote, from Marvel Spider-Man. From there, let's move right along to the gadgets. So this is kind of goes hand in hand with the suit abilities. One of the coolest things about the Spider-Man game is that gadget wheel. Not only are the gadgets that they selected awesome because they really assist your gameplay, and they really help the gameplay to feel very fresh, because you're not just constantly button mashing the same exact combinations, but you have this ability wheel that you bring up, and then on that wheel you can see different ways that you can either take down enemies stealthily, or if you're overwhelmed in a situation, there's like the spider bot ability that you can go on ahead, or spider drone, sorry, ability that you can go on ahead and use, or the electric web shot that you could use. You could use the suspension matrix to knock a bunch of enemies up into the air. There's just so many variables that you can utilize in order to keep the gameplay fresh and exciting. And I think it would be really cool if they implemented this. Now, in some ways, they have kind of confirmed that there will be some sort of a loot system, and the way that it's described in the game and what we've gotten so far, the latest update I think came along at either EGX or maybe New York Comic Con, and essentially they explained that there's going to be a gear system. Now, these gears are going to have different rarities, which kind of scares me off because, again, my problem with the whole gears is that anytime you hear rarity and items in a video game, it immediately makes you think of loot boxes. So I hope that that will not happen. I hope there's not some like, hey, buy an Avengers crate and then you open it up and that's how you get good gear. I really hope that's not the case. So we'll see, but they have talked about this gear system, and essentially the higher the rarity of the certain gear that you unlock, the more perks it will have to your character. So obviously it will basically build on top of your regular abilities, and it will scale like maybe healing, or it'll allow you to go on ahead and have like a health boost or a defensive boost and things like that, which is cool. But the problem is, it means that it's all going to be stuff that is purely functional in the sense that it is just for the character to have variety in how much damage, for example, your character can absorb, how much defense your character will have, which is awesome. I think that that's cool, that it's kind of almost like a role-playing element, but I almost think that it'd be really cool if they implemented also some sort of a system of gadgets. I understand the counter argument to this, because you can say, well, when you have so many playable characters, it's impossible to design a bunch of different gadgets for each character. It's just not going to be possible from a capital perspective. You can't really allocate that much money to each and every single one of the characters, whereas in Marvel Spider-Man, all you worry about is one hero. It's Spider-Man. That's all you have to really design. So I understand that argument, but maybe they don't have to design quite as complex of a gadget wheel. Like, it doesn't have to have 8 different items, but maybe 2 or 3, so that when I'm playing as Thor, for example, I can go on ahead and, I don't know, unlock Mjolnir and Stormbreaker. And Stormbreaker does one thing and Mjolnir does another. And then maybe if you're dual wielding them as a charged up power up, it gives you some sort of a ultimate move or some sort of a ultimate ability that you wouldn't otherwise. So that's just kind of my suggestion here. Now, from there, let's go on ahead and transition to the intuitive gameplay. Now, this is much more of a divisive issue, because I think that it's really tough to articulate intuitive gameplay and put it into words and explain what it really means. But what I would say is that when you play and when you even watch Spider-Man gameplay, it's very intuitive. Everything happens together and it coincides together in terms of when you go for the takedown or into a whip attack or into one of your gadgets, it all flows so well together. Whereas I think that a lot of the gameplay, especially the early gameplay that we got for Avengers, seemed a lot more like herky-jerky. It just seemed like you were kind of mashing from one thing and forcing another ability and forcing another ability. It didn't seem like the cohesive animation was taking place to make the gameplay feel intuitive. And I hope that that's just a bad first impression from just the way that the game looks, because unfortunately I've not had any hands-on moments with the game where I could actually feel, what does the character feel like? Does it move intuitively, or is there like a weird disconnect between how you move and what the actual, or I guess maybe it's not even how you move. It's more so what you press on the controller and then what happens to your character on the screen. So I think that separation is honestly oftentimes what makes a game bad. So hopefully it was just bad first impressions, and it seems like the gameplay has gotten better. Like the things that we've seen with Kamala Khan looks a lot more intuitive, and hopefully since she's the protagonist, they're putting the most amount of attention into her gameplay, and therefore she will feel like the best playable character in the game, especially with all the variety of her abilities, with being able to stretch the arms and different limbs and everything like that. It makes it possible that gameplay is going to be a whole lot of fun. Now, the last thing we're going to go on, the second to last thing. What am I doing? I'm already skipping to item number 5. The second to last thing that I want to talk about, and this one is one that I know some people disagree with me on, because I know some people don't like these, and that is side quests. So one of my favorite aspects of Spider-Man were the side quests. I've always enjoyed those in the Batman games. I think they did a great job with those, especially in Arkham City. I feel like they really, really nailed the side quests, because it's in the side quests that you meet Mad Hatter or Bane or Man-Bat. Like there's all these characters that you meet by going away from the main campaign. And if you don't want to meet those characters, you might never run into them. Like if you're destroying the Titan containers, or if you're ignoring the Titan containers in Batman Arkham City, you might never actually even run into those enemies. Marvel's Spider-Man does a similar thing with like the Tombstone mission. If you don't do those side quests, you might not ever even run into Tombstone. You might skip that altogether. There might be no reason for you to actually fight him. He does not affect your main storyline. So I think that that's interesting, and I think that that's a cool mechanic that I would love to see implemented in Avengers. I hope that they include side quests that reward you and introduce different characters, maybe even obscure villains from the different Marvel parts of the world. Like maybe you start a side quest and suddenly you team up with like a Daredevil character, just something that is very highly unexpected. It doesn't have to be fully flashed out where it's just, oh, whoa, look at all this attention to detail. It could literally just be a cool side story that you are able to explore using a certain character, and then you team up as Kamala Khan and Daredevil, or maybe if it's not Kamala Khan, it's Iron Man or one of the other announced Avengers, like it's Hulk and Daredevil. For the sake of this example, obviously we're using Daredevil, but any type of side quests, I think, where there's almost like its own little story being told, I think would be really, really cool to see. In addition to that, I think some of the other side quests in the game were really cool. Like, for example, the Taskmaster side quests, they were almost like challenges that you weren't really sure what they were building to, but then at one moment, boom shakalaka, you're fighting Taskmaster. So I think that it would be really cool if they implemented that. Plus, I think all those little fight scenes that you have, I think were really cool. Obviously, again, this is going to be a divisive thing because I know a lot of people don't like open world games having so many like pointless, as they say, side quests, but I think that you can look to Spider-Man as to how to do side quests well. It never felt like there were way too many of them. It never felt like, for the most part, except for the photo challenges where you got the worst possible costume as a reward, it never felt like you were not rewarded for completing challenges, except for maybe the crimes, like the different crimes that they had for the district, where it's like, oh, you have to stop this many thug crimes and demon crimes and prisoner crimes and sable crimes. Those were a little bit redundant, but outside of that, like the Taskmaster challenges, the pigeon challenges, the Black Cat stakeouts, the research stations, the outposts, hideouts, all of those, in my opinion, were really, really fun to explore, and they rewarded you for putting more time into this world. So I'd love to see some sort of a mechanic of side quests in a similar way in Marvel's Avengers. And then last, but certainly not least, are the boss fights. One of my favorite aspects of the Spider-Man game were the boss fights. I really loved that they went ahead and in multiple boss fights, they had you fight against two villains at once, so that they didn't restrict themselves to just one gameplay mechanic. Typically speaking, whenever you fight a big behemoth type character like Rhino, in every video game, it's basically the same thing of where the character charges at you, you have to dodge at the very last moment. As they bump into some sort of a structure or something like that, you then go on ahead and have your moment of where you can land a little bit of damage. And that's been kind of the familiar and the exact formula that they've used for every Spider-Man Rhino boss fight or every giant character that you basically fight. But by throwing Scorpion into that same boss fight, you now added another mechanic that you have to worry about and play around as you're fighting the typical Rhino scenario where you're just trying to make him fall for a certain trap and overcommit to an attack. So I think that it's very cool that they went ahead and got around like the classic boring at this point boss fights by just adding another enemy that you have to be concerned about that has completely different gameplay mechanics to the one enemy that you're fighting. I think that's a cool idea, and I really would love to see that implemented, especially because if we think about the comic books universe, it's like most of the time when a villain or a hero is fighting a villain, they are fighting multiple villains at once in many, many cases. So why not implement that same type of concept into the boss fights, and instead of just having us fight one villain at a time, give us two villains that provide for an interesting gameplay dynamic between the two of them, because each one almost requires a different strategy and a different approach. So with that in mind, ladies and gentlemen, let me know what you guys think. If you think all of these are hot garbage ideas, obviously let me know in the comment section below. I would absolutely be a-okay with that. But at the same time, I'd love to hear your suggestions and counters to what you would then change or improve or add into the Avengers video game, or things that you would like to see implemented from Marvel Spider-Man in the Avengers game. So let me know down in the comment section below. Of course, don't forget to have an absolutely fantastic day, and I'll see you all later, alligators. Bye-bye, everyone.